From M&T Bank Stadium, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Tuesday morning, the wee hours of a Tuesday morning, to recap the Ravens 38-30 loss to the Detroit Lions in week 3 of their 2025 campaign. They fall to 1-2. They're under 500. We're going to break this down from every angle. What went wrong specifically? I think we have to start with the defense. We will dive into everything that went wrong, from their inability to stop the run to their inability to get the run game going on offense. We'll talk about another costly Derrick Henry fumble, all that and much, much more. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time. All right, Jonas, let's recap this one. Ravens fall to the Detroit Lions 38-30. We came into this game talking about Lamar Jackson's sparkling record against NFC teams, the Ravens' terrific record in primetime games at home, the fact that the Ravens were wearing their all-black uniforms, all the great momentum, everything was pointing to a Ravens win. And they came out here and played pretty lackluster, pretty unimpressive football. And I think it, to me, starts with the defense. I think the defense showed once again that you put a good offense in front of them, you put a good quarterback in front of them, and they are not up to the task. Was that your first takeaway?
I think mine was just that this looked like a Dan Campbell coached Lions team, and this did not look like a John Harbaugh coached Ravens team. You know, this was the kind of Detroit offense that has been the hallmark of their rise to prominence. And we expected a stiffer test from this Ravens defense, because the whole mentality in Baltimore is you've got to earn the right to rush the passer by stopping the run.
Yep. And
the Ravens, when they got into pass rushing situations, couldn't rush the passer, but those were few and far between because they couldn't stop the run either. There were just so many situations where this team didn't lay a hand on a ball carrier until he was 5, 8, 15 yards past the line of scrimmage. And that was just so thoroughly un-Ravens-like. And again, this isn't the 2024 Lions who had, you know, a great center, a lot of continuity up front. This is a team with a remade interior, a left tackle who was playing through a shoulder injury, and not a mobile quarterback. And for the Ravens to get gashed to the tune of 200 plus yards in an over 50% success rate, just pretty appalling from a team that prides itself on being able to be stiff and firm up the middle.
Yeah, Lions average 6.5 yards per play in this one. They rack up 426 yards of total offense. You look at the rushing stats, and that's, to me, where it starts and ends. I mean, the Ravens as a team rushed for 85 yards. The Lions as a team rushed for 224. After this game, John Harbaugh said, quite frankly, that the defense was not good enough. We heard from Kyle Hamilton, who, after a disappointing showing in week 1, said he almost threw up on the field when he looked at the stats that the Bills put up. And in this one, he wasn't quite as effusive in his criticism of the Ravens defense, but it was a thoroughly uninspired effort. We obviously have to caveat this. Again, I don't know if that's a verb, but I'm going to use it as such, with the fact that the Ravens were without Nnamdi Madubuike and Kyle Van Noy. So you are without one of your big run stuffing / pass rushing, your guy that can do it all in the middle, your $100 million defensive lineman, and your veteran specialty pass rusher. However, this defense is too talented to be run over like that. It is just too talented to give up 224 yards, rushing yards, and to be gashed over the middle by a talented, but frankly not world-beating quarterback in Jared Goff.
Yeah, I think we probably underrate Kyle Van Noy because he's just like a guy who's B- to B+ at a lot of stuff. But he is a guy who is there on early downs for you when you need it. He's there for late downs. He's there for you on late downs when you need it. We did not see a lot of Odafe Owe tonight, especially in that second half, which was interesting because, again, you would think that the whole purpose of him putting on weight was being able to not just turn that strength and power into power rushes, but being able to hold up better against the run, which he couldn't in some of those games last year when they took him off the field because he was getting beat up against Philly, getting beat up against Buffalo. But you look out there in the second half, and it's a lot of Mike Green, which is surprising. It's a lot of Tavius Robinson, which you expect, but a lot more Mike Green than Odafe Owe, which was disappointing. But again, someone like Nabi Madubuike should be a force multiplier and has been a force multiplier. You look at some of the splits for this Ravens defense coming into tonight, 4.3 yards per carry allowed when he was on the field, 6.4 yards allowed per carry when he was off the field, a much higher pressure rate when he was on than when off. But it can't just be, this can't be like a glass menagerie. It can't be that fragile where you take one single Lego piece away from this defense and the whole thing crumbles. And that's what it felt like. I mean, it wasn't a steady stream of explosive. That the Ravens were bipolar most of the night where they were boom, bust, seemed like on alternating drives. Like they would allow a 97-yard touchdown drive one possession and then force 3 and out with 0 yards allowed on the next one. It just, they never got really a handle on this Lions offense. And that was probably the most surprising because they had an extra day to get their bearings right.
Yeah, it's like you said, it should not be, this defense should not be one missing piece away from collapse. That they shouldn't need every single piece in place in order to be a steady defense. I mean, you look at their depth chart, you look at their starting defense. I mean, you lose Nnamdi Madubuike for this game, you lose Kyle Van Noy, fine. You have $100 million inside linebacker Roquan Smith. You have first-round pick, superstar cornerback Marlon Humphrey, who has talked ad nauseum over the last 8 months about wanting to bring back a physical toughness and a culture to this defense. You have Kyle Hamilton, all-world $100 million safety there as well. You have first-round rookie Malachi Starks next to him at safety. I mean, this Odafe Owe first-round pick. I mean, this is a defense that should be a lot worlds better than it is right now. And name the last good offense that this team faced that they were able to shut down.
I made the case that it was the Bills in the playoffs.
They gave up 27 points to the Bills in the playoffs.
Yeah, but not a whole lot of yards. And one of those drives was a short field. But yeah, it's the Ravens' climb out of the basement last year defensively was premised around beaten up severely, aggressively on some very mediocre quarterbacks and some very mediocre defense, very mediocre offenses. So it has been a while since you've come out of a game being like, yeah, they really just put a stranglehold on a top 5 DVOA offense, top 10 DVOA offense. Tonight they had a chance. This was a Lions offense that was obviously coming in flying high, having just beat the brakes off that Browns defense. A Browns defense, by the way, that did a much better job defending the run than this Ravens run defense.
Right.
And they looked perfectly competent for some periods and just totally overmatched on others. And I think you take some issues with the coaching. I don't have the splits up ahead of me, but there are a lot of situations where the Lions would come out with 2 tight ends, and the Ravens, as they want to do, matched with nickel personnel. So they were like, you know what, we feel confident in dropping Kyle Hamilton in there and dropping Marlon Humphrey down there and winning inside because we felt like the physicality of our DBs was good enough, but it wasn't. And on the occasions when, the Lions faked the run to get to the pass, then you have situations like Marlon Humphrey getting beat on a stutter and go, Marlon Humphrey getting beat on a, flag route on that 4th and 2, whatever it was. So I think that you take issue with a lot of aspects of this operation tonight.
Yeah. I mean, the Ravens did not sack Jared Goff once. They overall just could not force enough pressure. It felt like really the only times that they were able to get pressure on Jared Goff was when they were bringing heavy blitzes. Odafe Owe had that play where he was in Jared Goff's face and basically forced to throw away. Jared Goff is very good, by the way, at not taking sacks. And when you have somebody who can get the ball out quickly, who can avoid a sack, is not going to make a dumb play, you're in trouble. The turnovers that they had last week against the Browns, we said it last time, were a little bit fluky in that all turnovers require some level of luck. Those also did. I mean, the Joe Flacco throwaway was just a bad play by Joe Flacco. This defense wasn't even close to getting a turnover. For a defense that has talked so much about how they wish that they had forced more turnovers against the Bills and how they were working so hard to make that a point of emphasis in training camp. Another game where they don't force a turnover, and there was no time in this game where they even came close.
No, I think, again, this could be a blip. This could just be the two worst games that this Ravens defense will play all year, week 1 and week 3. Obviously, not a lot of offenses on the schedule better than the Bills, better than the Lions. But if you are going to play this way, where you just can't get off the field reliably with these drives, then like you said, you're going to need to create turnovers. You have to be able to create chaos some way. We were talking before the show, the 2024 Bills subsisted on a powerhouse offense and a defense that was not good down to down, but as they do every year, did a great job at creating turnovers and creating short fields and just taking, pivoting the EPA in their favor by generating these big plays. And the Ravens did not do that tonight.
Yeah.
And, the best way to create turnovers is to put pressure on these guys in high leverage spots. And the Ravens couldn't do that. I mean, how many situations on 3rd and long or 4th and long, or even 4th and short, did Jared Goff have a guy in his grill pressuring him, forcing him to do something he didn't want? It was very, very rare. You felt that lack of gravitational pull of a Nnamdi Madubuike tonight. And, credit Zach Orr, I guess, for trying something different on that first drive. 2 corner blitzes, neither of which got home. But it seemed like he learned his lesson pretty quickly, because I'm not sure if the Ravens bothered sending a DB blitz from the perimeter for the rest of the game, because they saw just how quickly and how sufficiently they got burned on that first drive.
I think it's frustrating for Ravens fans that have been hearing so much about the Ravens wanting to bring back physicality, wanting to evoke memories of the old 2000 Ravens, of the Ravens of years past that was hard-hitting, creating turnovers, and inciting fear into an opponent. They also probably heard a lot this summer about how much better the Ravens defense looked after week 10 last year, and how they could just take those lessons that they learned and bring them over to this year. How they had figured things out after week 10, how it was all just a matter of a lack of communication, poor communication. They had everything ironed out. They bring in even more talent. 1st-round rookie Malachi Starks. They signed Jair Alexander, who was once again a healthy scratch in this game. And then you go back and you look at the stretch after week 10 going into this year, and it looks more and more like a mirage. Because, that week 11 game that they played last year where they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't allow a touchdown. They allow all field goal, they lose to the Steelers, obviously. They don't allow a touchdown, but they allow just 18 points. And that was really the catalyst. That was the turning point for that defense. After that, yes, the defense played a lot better, but there really wasn't a murderer's row of offenses. I mean, the Chargers were a good team last year. They were a playoff team. Ravens beat them. They did not have a otherworldly offense. They lose to the Eagles the week after that. They beat the Giants. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Texans. They beat the Browns. That's not exactly an outstanding list of offenses.
Yeah.
And then you start the season this year by giving up 41 points to the Bills and losing. Week 2, it's the Joe Flacco Browns, so you can't read much into that. But you throw a good offense at them again, and they struggle, and they give up 38 points. I just have a very hard time. Yes, the offense struggled, and we'll get into it, but I have a very hard time blaming the offense in this one when the defense is consistently putting so much pressure on their offense to score. They're never giving them short fields. They're never giving them the ball via a turnover. they are always putting the pressure on the offense. Lamar Jackson in this offense has to be perfect. They weren't today, and they pay the price.
I think probably the one thing that you could say about that was for sure elite about that Ravens defense last year was the run defense, because they just did not give up explosives. They were great on a down-to-down basis. I think I tweeted this out tonight, but I believe their longest run that they gave up all last year was a 25-yarder to Saquon late in that loss to the Eagles. That kind of put the Ravens away for good. You have tonight, in just the second half, 2 plays longer than that. You have the 71-yarder, whatever it was, by David Montgomery, and then you have the 31-yard touchdown that basically put the Ravens away. So for them to be this leaky up front, obviously, the 31-yarder that I think Quinshon Judkins had last week was when Roquan was off the field late in that game. See, you're, I think, able to kind of hand wave that away and say that's not really representative of who we are as a run defense. You can say week 1, the Bills rushed for over 100 yards, but they really had to grind for it. There weren't a whole lot of explosives. You want more stops on second and short and third and short and fourth and short. They didn't get those. Whatever. It's a long season. But tonight, for them to be this bad on a down-to-down basis, not giving up explosives. I think Next Gen Stats had them for 20 missed tackles. Roquan's not getting off blocks. Kyle Hamilton's not getting off blocks. Malachi Starks, I think we've seen now 2 weeks in a row where he's been pretty iffy in the open field. He missed a tackle last week. He missed, I believe, the tackle on the David Montgomery explosive run tonight. That was an issue for him at times at Georgia. We saw it reappear tonight. And certain guys need to look in the mirror and reckon with just how miserable an experience tonight was for them.
What more levers does Zach or does John Harbaugh, does this defense have to pull? They pulled the lever of making Jair Alexander a healthy scratch. They pulled the lever of basically benching Trenton Simpson for Teddy Buchanan, who 4th-round rookie, made a lot of mistakes tonight, as you might expect from a 4th-round rookie. They pulled the lever of saying that this defense isn't really mature yet and we have to step up. They had a team dinner or a defensive dinner after their loss in week 1 to Buffalo. I mean, what more levers can you possibly pull other than just cross your fingers and hope that Nnamdi Madubuike and Kyle Van Noy come back?
Yeah, I mentioned it, but just being a little bit more flexible with your personnel. Just not insisting on matching 12 personnel, 21 personnel with nickel. Just being able to meet that with the traditional base personnel, just 4 DBs. I know that means that, you're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be able to get Cheeto Awuzie out there. You're not going to be able to maybe have the speed that you want out there. But I think we saw tonight that they were definitely put in awkward situations today that they just weren't able to handle. I mean, so many of those runs in this game tonight were right up the middle, which doesn't even really reflect entirely on the smaller personnel that they had. I think Next Gen Stats had this from the Lions called runs. They ran between the tackles on 60.5% of their rushing attempts and gained 156 yards, the second most by any team this season, and 2 touchdowns on 23 such carries. So they basically averaged close to 5 to 6 yards per gain on those inside runs. And back in the day of Michael Pierce, Shadow Michael Pierce, who was in the house today.
He was.
You expected better things, and they're just getting blown off the ball, and wasn't pretty to see.
No, it wasn't all on the defense. Switch over to the offense. By the way, thank you to the people who are watching live at 1:05 a.m. on YouTube, Facebook, or X. Keep those comments coming as well, or you could be listening to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Now we'll read it out here on the show. Seeing some interesting comments about how the fall off from 2023 to now in terms of defense with largely the same personnel has been massive. I mean, you really have the fundamental pieces of that defense are still here for the most part, and yet they look nothing like the defense that was coordinated by Mike McDonald. It just looks like a completely different unit.
Could the secret weapon to this Ravens run defense be the smallest guy on the starting defense? Could 5'8", 140-pounder Darius Washington
really
have been the straw that stirs the drink?
He was thumping last year. He was delivering some hard hits.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't one of their big men, Brent Urban, who was active for this game, came up on what he believed to be a goal line stand, was wagging his finger. No, it was in fact a touchdown. Didn't help their Ravens defense to have him in there at all tonight, unfortunately. Let's talk about the offense, though, because this offense certainly was frustrating at times. And to me, I just have a longer leash for this offense because they score 40 points in week 1 at Buffalo. Last week, they score, 34 points against the Browns. So they are, they have been one of the best offenses in football through the first several weeks. And they scored enough to win tonight. I know basically that last touchdown that got them to 30 points was in garbage time, but their offense scored 14 first half points. For the most part, they kept pace with the Lions. The defense continually, every opportunity that they were given, fell on their face. But the offense was not perfect tonight by any stretch, and perhaps a perfect game could have gotten them over the hump. The run game is my biggest concern after this one. Whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the play calling, whether it's too predictable. They have 85 rushing yards tonight. Derrick Henry again has a critical fourth quarter fumble that changes the momentum of this game. Awful things in the run game for a team that was otherworldly in the run game last year.
Yeah, I think Derrick started the game with 3 carries for 36 yards on that opening touchdown drive. And that means that for the rest of the game, he had 9 carries for 14 yards, which sounds a lot like
and a fumble.
Week 2 and the fumble. So obviously it was hard. It was tough to take too much issue with the run game output based on how they were kind of moving the ball for stretches there. But when you look at in hindsight and say, if only this, if only that, I mean, this game never really felt like a one possession game. It ended that way. But if you go back in time and the Ravens punch it in from the goal line on the 3 opportunities from the 1 yard line, then, the Ravens that are there in the mix they're there at the end. We don't know how the late game stuff would play out any differently, but they lost by a touchdown and they whiffed on a touchdown, in a pretty embarrassing way. Talking to Roger Rosengarten after the game, he acknowledged that like last year, it was close to automatic when they got that close. And with the optionality that you have with Lamar as a ball carrier and Derrick and just the size that they have inside, they should be doing better than needing like 4 trips from the 1 yard line to move the ball 3 feet. I don't know if it's as simple as bringing Pat Ricard back will solve all their woes. Certainly, you could see a little bit more creativity from Todd Monken in some cases. But when the Ravens scored on that 3-yard touchdown pass on the drive after they failed to punch it in from the 1 yard line, I tweeted this out. Like, was there anyone in the stadium who thought they were going to run the ball from that 3 yard line? I think everyone knew, including that Lions defense, that there's no chance that they take a shot with the run game based on just how much they were getting dominated up front.
It's baffling. The goal to go issues are officially an issue. They are officially something that we have to talk about because
and this was the best red zone offense in the NFL last year.
Yeah, and last week, we saw them struggle against the Browns in a couple goal to go possessions. One where they have to settle for a field goal after DeAndre Hopkins basically sets them up at the half-yard line. The next possession, it takes them 4 tries to get into the end zone. They finally do so with Devontae Walker. So you're thinking, all right, a couple possessions here and there where they struggle, Todd Monken will fix this. And then they come out in this one. They have 1st and goal at the Detroit 3 plays that go exactly 1 yard. And then that 4th and goal that you said, Jonas, where it is Lamar Jackson takes the snap, sprints to his right, and then finds absolutely nobody, eats a strip sack fumble that could have turned into a touchdown on the other side. Ugly.
Yeah. The weird, I think the thing that people have overlooked when they talked about Lamar's dominance on Monday night, which obviously ended tonight, there was the 22 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but he's had some costly fumbles. And tonight wasn't really that costly because they were losing that possession regardless of whether he fumbled it. But remember, he had a fumble I think 2 fumbles at the end of that Raiders game in like 2020, 2021 that really loomed large. He had a lost fumble at the end of that Chiefs blowout, you know, around the same season that loomed large as they were trying to make a comeback late in that first half. They were never really the same after that. And then we saw another one tonight. But again, that was just a symptom of a larger problem for him, for this offense, for this offensive line. 7 sacks, tying a career high. Sam Schwarzenstein, who's with Amazon and Next Gen Stats, I think tweeted out tonight that his average time to pressure was not that quick. I think it was about 3.7 seconds. Maybe that was thrown off by a huge anomaly that really distorted the stats. But you felt like Lamar was in Superman mode today, which you are 100% willing to overlook because of the times when he does make something happen. But the Lions, to their credit, just never stopped pursuing. They were always, as many helmets to the ball as possible. Lamar could juke one guy, but then there was another guy looping around him, retracing, getting in his way. And Lamar just never was really able to break loose in the way that we are so accustomed to seeing. And, I don't know how many sacks, for instance, PFF will credit this offensive line with allowing versus how many they'll credit Lamar for allowing. But I think it's going to be at least a couple because there were just situations where you're kind of putting your hands on your head like, Lamar, just throw it away. Or look for the check down. There were some scenarios where guys weren't getting out in routes because they were so worried about the pass protection that Lamar didn't have anyone to throw it to, which is, a problem separate from all this. But 7 sacks, 12 sacks total. I think he took 23 all last year.
That's crazy.
It's something they're going to have to reckon with.
A team that has the best running quarterback of all time and one of a first ballot Hall of Fame running back, one of the greatest running backs of all time, both in their primes, should not be this bad at the goal line. They just shouldn't be. You should be able to punch it in from 3 yards out. I don't understand their issues there. Like you said, maybe Pat Ricard is really the straw that stirs the drink. But you also invested in DeAndre Hopkins, by the way, who I haven't seen a single goal line fade thrown his way at all this year. Have you?
No, but I'm not on team goal line fade.
I know that's a low percentage play, but it's a high percentage play when you have DeAndre Hopkins.
I guess.
At
age 24, maybe.
Is there a player? But look, D-Hop is open even when he's not. And if you are continually trying to run the ball down their throats and it's not working, maybe try something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think this just goes back to the Ravens got out coached tonight. You're just looking at the stats right now and you're reminded of certain things like, oh yeah, the Ravens did have Derrick Henry attempt a pass tonight, and it nearly ended with an interception. And that reminds you that the Lions ran a kind of flea flicker, basically, that ended up with a 20-ish yard completion to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They had an option with Amon-Ra St. Brown that ended with a touchdown. They were just, Ben Johnson may be gone. He may be in the Windy City, but Dan Campbell still knows offense. And that was so clear from the way that he called this game, the way that he layered all of his, tendencies. Just, you never really felt like the Ravens were able to get a bead on what this team was doing from pass rush to run defense. I think the coverage downfield was pretty good. It was only really a couple bad completions that Marlon Humphrey gave up. And, I guess we should show him a little grace because he was coming into this game with the groin injury. Looked like he might have tweaked it at some point, was still able to get up over 21 miles per hour as he chased down David Montgomery. But like you said, there's just too much talent on this defense that's that kind of coaching advantage means so much in a game like this.
Yeah, and we also saw the difference in aggressiveness between these two head coaches, between Dan Campbell and John Harbaugh, because the Ravens had a chance to go for it in their own territory. It was, I'm not positive what the yardage there. I think
I'll look it up.
Okay. I think it was 4th and 8, and he was asked about it after the game, and he just said that was basically too long to go for it. But they are down a touchdown at this point. They still have all their 3
4th and 9.
4th and 9. They have all 3 of their timeouts in their pocket. I get that. But they punt the ball away with 4.5 minutes left and give the Lions a chance to bleed out the clock. Not only do the Lions bleed out the clock, they step on the Ravens' throat by scoring a touchdown. And you saw it on the other side where the Lions only score that touchdown because they went for it on 4th and 2 right around midfield and pick up the first down. That is quintessential Dan Campbell And John Harbaugh has been one of the more aggressive coaches in the NFL really since 2019. But we saw it in the Bills game where they didn't go for it, where they had an opportunity to win the game with a first down. They don't go for it. In this instance, they're down a touchdown, 4th and 9. That's a long, long way to go. But the way that your defense had been playing all night, you probably felt better. If you felt better about one unit, you'd feel better about the offense. You had a chance to put the ball in your hands of your MVP quarterback and try to climb your way back into this game and potentially tie it. You don't do it. And you end up giving away the game.
Yeah. Lions went 3 for 3 on 4th down. And looking at the play-by-play, I believe all 3 of those conversions happened on drives that led to touchdowns.
There you go.
Those are the kind of advantages that the Ravens used to gobble up like Miss Pac-Man, but no longer.
What about Pac-Man himself?
I don't know this. I don't know the difference between Miss Pac-Man and Pac-Man in terms of the. I'm not familiar with their canon. I'm not familiar with
one has a bow, the other one doesn't. Can we talk about Derrick Henry's fumble issues? Because if one is an anomaly, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a trend. He has 3 fumbles in 3 games. He has 1 fumble in each of the Ravens' first 3 games. Happened in week 1, fumble lost in the 4th quarter on first down when they're trying to salt the game away against the Bills. Opens the door for the Bills to come back in and win that game. Week 2, the fumble doesn't end up killing them.
And we should say,
and the Ravens recover it because it was Tylan Wallace.
Yes. That happened while the Ravens were up just 3-0. It's early in the 2nd quarter, so literally anything could have happened, but that is like a sliding doors moment where what if the Ravens had lost that fumble, that was in Cleveland territory. It happened at around the 16-yard line.
Yeah.
In Cleveland territory. If Cleveland gets that, if they get like an explosive, they get a field goal, they get a touchdown, maybe that game does not end up in the blowout that it proceeded into. I mean, we saw Cleveland was good enough to hang a loss on the Packers yesterday. I think we would expect that when the Ravens face the Browns again, next time they probably will not be beating them by 24 points. And so I don't want to say Derrick Henry is responsible for 3 losses in a hypothetical Ravens world where they lose in week 2, because that's unfair. Just like it's unfair to blame him for what happened in week 1, because he was so good for every other play in that game, but the one where he lost the fumble. But it's just very jarring. It's very surreal, but it's undeniably harmful. What impact these fumbles have had on the offense.
Yeah, Derrick Henry doesn't fumble. I mean, he has not fumbled throughout his career, and to have 1 fumble in each of his first 3 games. And it is frustrating because he looks so good in so many other ways. He obviously struggled after that big touchdown run, but he puts the Ravens on the board with a 28-yard touchdown run to start the game. He said after the game, he apologized to Flock Nation. He said, he's going to try to figure it out, but give Aiden Hutchinson credit. That's an incredible play that is made by an incredible player to come around the backside of that. You almost never see a play like that happen where the defensive end comes all the way back around to force a fumble in the backfield. However, it happened at a critical moment. It can happen. And it cost the Ravens dearly.
Yeah. He apologized to his teammates afterward. He obviously was responsible enough to stick around and talk to reporters, which is not something that everyone we wanted to talk to did. Again, just like after week 1, no show from Roquan Smith, who I do not think is going to be having a good time when he looks at the film from this game. It just, John Harbaugh talked afterwards about how they just weren't good enough in a lot of different facets. And like I said, this didn't feel like a John Harbaugh coach team. It did look like a Dan Campbell coach team. And I think that's really, really worrisome, because I think you want as many good things to feel about heading into week 4 against Kansas City and the Chiefs, because the Ravens have their own psychological issues to process there. They just have not played well at Arrowhead. And this isn't a must-win game, because we know just how accommodating that schedule is coming out of the bye. But it sure would be nice to be coming back for those final 2 games before the bye, both at home, both against, would-be NFC contenders, although, or not an NFC. The Texans are in the AFC.
The AFC contender.
Would be contenders.
Yeah.
With a win in your pocket and just a relief of finally having knocked off Mahomes in his place. And I think the Ravens opened as like 2.5-point favorites, but gun to my head, I'm probably picking Kansas City right now based off everything that I saw tonight.
Yeah, well, on the other side of this break, Jonas, we're going to look at special teams, and we're also going to try to put some kind of positive spin on this. What do you say?
Okay, let's try.
All right, we will certainly try.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go places.
Looking for the ultimate game day spot? Head to Guinness, Baltimore. We've got fresh pints, the biggest screen south of the stadium, and the perfect place to cheer on the home team. Game time is Guinness time.
All right, Jonas, Tyler Loop update. He did once again kick a kickoff short of the landing zone. That's now twice that he has done that. He's also kicked a ball out of bounds, which is
Twice, right?
Does he kick 2 balls out of bounds?
He's
on
up to
kickoffs?
4 penalties total. I believe that's most in the NFL.
So it is a penalty if you kick it short of the landing zone? Yeesh.
Yeah. He's just like the cute little puppy that you bring home that you could never imagine giving up, but you're really, really frustrated with him getting into your closet and just tearing up the shoes. Like it's this one little thing that keeps pissing you off because everything else about him you really enjoy. Came a little close tonight to missing that field goal. I was surprised that they actually called it good from our vantage point. It looked like that he was wide left or wide right, whatever it was. But
yeah, it looked like it was one of those that went directly over top of the upright.
Yeah,
from 41 yards.
That was a drive where, again, that was a situation where the Lions get the ball at the 40-yard line. And what do? They only need 60 yards, so they go and score a touchdown. And, you don't want to say that if they started at 25 instead, the Ravens force a 3 and out or they force a field goal, but you can't be handing a team this lethal, this potent, any kind of short field. And that's what they did.
I think our listeners would scream at their audio devices, at their phones, if we did not mention the fact that Keaton Mitchell was once again a healthy scratch. He has not been active for any game so far this season. Rasheen Ali, the Ravens feel, is a bigger contributor in other areas of special teams. He had a nice kick return in this one, took it back about to midfield after he suffered a concussion in the first play of the Browns game, came right back and made a contribution there. But Rasheen Ali continues to not see the field for the Ravens. Let's talk about Mark Andrews if we want to have a silver lining on this one, because our word of the day, Jonas, is yawp. Because one of the 2 people on this podcast tweeted out, let me get the word up here. Mark Andrews with a barbaric yawp after that touchdown. Yawp first appeared sometime in the 15th century. It means a raucous noise or a squawk. Why did you use yawp in that instance?
I don't know.
Did you use thesaurus.com?
No. I think I heard someone say yawp in a podcast recently, and it reminded me that it's a word. I guess it was popularized by Walt Whitman in a poem called Song of Myself. Ask me if I've read Song of Myself. No, dear listener, I have not read Song of Myself. But I think it's a
That's
funny
some
word.
Homework for next podcast.
Yeah, I'm not going to be reading poetry for this freaking podcast call.
My words are like poetry, so it's just as good.
I think it says everything about how this game went, that Mark Andrews had the game that he had. And as far as I could tell, maybe I missed the scrum, but when he was getting dressed in the locker room, there were no reporters hanging out near his stall waiting to talk to him, because they were focused on the car crash that we'd seen unfold on the, I shouldn't say car crash because Mark Andrews got into a car crash, but because of the disastrous defensive showing that we saw unfold on the field, which is a shame because, I wrote this past week that I didn't think Mark Andrews was washed. I think we saw pretty conclusively he does not look washed. He got a couple great passes from Lamar that he did a great job hauling in. Do I expect him to be this kind of fantasy dynamo every week? No, especially with Isaiah Likely probably back next week. But it's a good thing to know that he is and can be the guy who can give you 6 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns on a night when you really, really needed it, and look, very close to the guy that, Ravens fans grew up idolizing, watching, wanting to buy jerseys of because of nights like this.
Last week, it was the wide receivers that really fueled the Ravens offense. It was not a big Mark Andrews day. It was not a big Charlie Kohler day. It was not a big Derrick Henry day. It was a big Zay Flowers day, Devontae Walker day, who had a nice catch again today. The wide receiver stepped up big last week. It's kind of the opposite this week. It was a lot of Mark Andrews, like he said, those 6 catches, 2 touchdowns. It was
Rashad Bateman. 5 catches, 63 yards, and a score.
Yeah, so he did his part there as well after he was not that effective last week against the Browns. You could look at this, if you look at this from the glass half full perspective, it's look at all these weapons that Lamar can pick and choose, Todd Monken can pick and choose on a weekly basis, and they will get good contributions from whoever is open, whoever is getting the ball thrown their way, and we saw that again this week.
Yeah, and still looking, I guess, for a full 4-quarter performance from this offense.
Yeah.
We got quite the sampling, quite the taste in week 1 before things just really went off the rails in that 4th quarter there in Buffalo. Last week, I guess you could say, was probably like 2 quarters of good ball against a really good Browns defense. And, they scored 30 points tonight, but I think they still left you wanting more because, listen, this Lions defense was not really having that good of a go against the Browns last week. They were able to kind of force them into the way that they wanted to play because of the fact that they just had such a big lead in that game. But this Lions pass defense was there for the taking. This Lions run defense, I thought, would be more vulnerable, and clearly they weren't. And I think the Ravens can feel a little bit better about their offensive line play, but they did a pretty good job handling the blitz. I think Lamar, a lot of his production came throwing against the blitz. And I'm curious to see, just how many of those sacks that he took, a majority of which were against 4-man rushes, were just guys not getting open downfield, Lamar holding onto the ball a little bit too long, the offensive line not doing what they needed to. It looked like Detroit was a little bit more creative with their pass rush plans. It wasn't just standard cage rushes like we saw in 2023 when the Ravens felt like had all day to throw. They were doing a little bit more to get in Lamar's face or to loop a guy behind him. So yeah, that's going to be something that I think we should definitely investigate when the All-22 film comes out.
I think their best drive of the day was certainly the drive to start the second half, where they go 11 plays, 73 yards in 6 minutes, and they come down and score a touchdown. It just feels like they haven't had too many sustained drives like that. It feels like they either score quickly or they don't score at all. The drive that the Lions had at the start of the game, where they went 98 yards in like 11 minutes. Like, we haven't seen a drive like that from the Ravens yet. That's a rare kind of length in terms of yardage and time for a drive. But partly what killed them in week 1, I feel like, was they scored very quickly, and then they just put the ball right back in the hands of the opponent to kind of bleed the clock and wear out their defense. And this offense, I would like to see them sustain more drives. They were last year pretty much right out of the gate. Maybe it took a few weeks for them to gel, but pretty early on, they were a fully operational Death Star. They're not there yet right now.
No.
And it's hard to say exactly why, whether it's Isaiah Likely and Pat Ricard being out or what, but they're not quite there yet.
This is kind of like a monkey paw season for Jordan Stout. When you think of 3 of his best punts, you get the dime that he drops against Buffalo inside the 5 that Trenton Simpson just dumbfoundedly carries across the goal line. You get the 2 inside the 5 tonight, both of which lead to long Lions touchdown drives. Like, if you were to tell the defense that they're going to score a touchdown against you, might as well have given them the ball at the 20 or the 25, just so that they would have been on the field for less time and given the offense more time, and the defense would have taken less wear and tear that maybe caught up with them by the game. So Jordan Stout, quietly having a Pro Bowl caliber season, and yet for some of the punts that he's dropped, just no payoff whatsoever, which I guess is kind of in keeping with the Ravens being 1-2, despite being one of the highest scoring offenses in the league.
Yeah. We always talk about injuries. Ravens, not that I could tell, didn't suffer any injuries over the course of this game.
I mean, Travis Jones, definitely not 100%.
Yes. Yeah. But nobody who left the game early, I don't believe. Travis Jones did stay in for the entire game.
Yeah.
That was miraculous, but of course, they started the game without Nnamdi Madubuike and Kyle Van Noy. Neither of those guys has landed on IR.
We didn't get an update from John Harbaugh on Madubuike's situation. Obviously, the fact that they were still doing testing on Saturday or over the weekend is a little bit worrisome.
With a neck injury.
That just should be a trigger for anyone who's familiar with Zach Gore's history. Obviously,
True.
I think it's probably a pretty good sign for Kyle Van Noy that he didn't get a IR designation, because you can't backdate IR designations like you can in baseball. So if they thought that he was going to be out for a long, long while, it would have made sense for them to make a move before today's game. But hopefully, with him not getting the designation, they feel like he can be back before the bye, which would be a good thing, obviously, for this pass rush that needs someone with his do everything abilities. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if the Ravens can't get Madubuike back soon, or God forbid at all this season, then that becomes a huge, huge hole on this defense that Roderick Washington doesn't look capable of filling, that Aeneas Peebles doesn't look capable of filling. Maybe if you get the best of their abilities in certain spots, like Brody early downs, Fub late downs, maybe you can get 75% of Madubuike's production. But like you said, Paul, they paid him $100 million for a reason, and that was a $100 million hole out there in the middle of that defense today.
Did I hear you make a baseball reference?
Nope.
Yes, you did. You not only made a baseball reference, but you gave away just how much you know about the rules of baseball. I think you're secretly a fan, Jonas.
I'm not.
All right, that just about does it for the Banner Ravens podcast. It's 1:30 a.m. I'd be shocked if I leave here before 3, given the editing that I have to do. But thank you so much for staying up with us, or you could be well rested.
That
and
was a
listening
barbaric yawn.
Not a yawp, though. Not a yawp. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano. Stay tuned for plenty more content on thebanner.com.
Shout out to the Banner.
Waving that Pulitzer Prize everywhere that we possibly can. Giannahan, Kyle Goon have plenty more coverage after this game as well, if you feel like reading the postmortem. We will be back probably Thursday, I will think, with a preview of another tough opponent, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs, where the Ravens will play them at Arrowhead next week at 4:30. Thanks so much for tuning in.